Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts. Here with my week of reading wrap-up where I talk about the books that I read, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. I had a good reading week. I've read a lot of books. It was a 3-day weekend, and so that always tends to help. And I want to tell you about them, so let's jump right in. The first book that I finished that I want to talk about is a really good story. This one was a NetGalley, but a NetGalley audio. So they're starting to do audio. And this is by Farrar, Straus and Giroux, and it was narrated by Edoardo Balerini. The title is called Return to Valetto, and it was by Dominic Smith. I really enjoyed this. This is the story of a man named Hugh. He is a historian with an adult daughter in college. He's a widower, and he has been summoned back to Italy. He's half Italian, half English, but has been living most of his life in England. They've received some upsetting news that his grandfather, who disappeared after World War II and never returned to the family, has left one of the homes in this village, the home that Hugh grew up in and Hugh uses on occasion with his family. That has been given to a mysterious family that they have never heard of and they don't know. So everyone is up in arms. This has been in the family for years. The understanding is it's always supposed to go to the family members, and everyone is very upset. They're upset because where has he been all this time? And then how dare he give away part of their homestead and expect them all to live with people that they don't know? He obviously has passed away. And so there's this question of, well, what was he doing? What happened to him? So this woman, Elisa, comes, and when he arrives, she has already taken possession of the cottage, and he has to stay with one of his older aunts. And they are all trying to figure out what is the legal ramifications. Is this really true? Is it a hoax? And he is there to kind of stake his claim to this cottage. It's a story about this village and village loyalties and how the village acted during World War II. It's also about personal histories and what happened to the grandfather when he ended up leaving. It's also about healing and about the secrets that are kept and the importance of acknowledging ills and wrongs done to a community. Elisa is the daughter of a woman who was sent as a little girl with other group of children, were sent to this village during World War II, evacuated so that they could be safe. And so there's a lot of memories are stirred up by Elisa's returning, and it comes to pass that Hugh and Elisa's mothers were best friends, but something happened to them. And nobody really knows what happened, but they disappeared for 3 days. So there's just a lot of little mysteries that are happening that are all pulled together in a really nice way. I found the writing of this to be very good. The characters were wonderful. And I liked hearing about this village coming to terms with some things, reckonings of things that have happened in the past and making space for potentially a new future. So that was that one. The next one, completely different. Completely different. This is Cursed Bread by Sophie Mackintosh. So this was longlisted for the Women's Prize, and I've never read any of Sophie Mackintosh. I think she was also maybe longlisted for the Women's Prize last year with The Water Cure, I think was her book. I didn't read that, so this is my first time reading anything from her. This feels like a fable. I couldn't really get a sense of time or necessarily place, and so kind of a little bit obscured. But this is the story of a baker's wife And she usually runs the bakery and kind of handles the register and the customers at kind of front of the house at this bakery. And her husband is the baker. And it's a kind of boring life. It's a very small town, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody else's business. And she's in a loveless marriage, and she's really desperate for physical intimacy, for sexual relationship with her husband. He's kind of pushing her away, not engaging with her, ignoring her, and she's just incredibly lonely. A new couple comes to town, Violet and her husband. We only know his name as the ambassador. And the entire village is abuzz. They've kind of woven this web of intrigue around the entire community. She's very haughty. They have this air of glamour about them, but there's also something going on with them. And Elodie, who is the baker's wife, kind of gets sucked into their orb. She starts going over to the house and meeting with Violet and trying to befriend her, and she's desperately in need for a friend. And she starts to observe the couple, and they have a very erotically charged relationship. And it's new to her, it's exciting to her, and she gets pulled in deeper and deeper and deeper. The writing is electric. It's very titillating. It's sexually charged. There's a lot of erotic games, erotic mind games that are being played among these people, and it definitely pulls Elodie in, and she may be getting in over her head. I will say that I enjoyed reading this book, but this is a case where, and I rarely do this, I actually read the synopsis a little bit, and it definitely tainted the experience for me, or it colored it in a specific way. And what I mean by that is this is based off something that actually happened. I'm not going to give too many details in case you don't know. So I'm not going to say exactly what happened. I was then waiting for this story to kind of intersect with that reality. And I think that took me out of just being in the moment with this story. I mean, when we open, we know that Elodie is in trouble. She's in trouble for something. So something went wrong in this relationship. So that's not a shocker. But the how, all of a sudden, I was always waiting for that moment. And so that was my reading experience that, I just wish I didn't know that. And I wish I could have gone into that without knowing that. I can see why it was on the long list. I would like to know maybe why it didn't make the short list. But I would love to know if you've read this and what your thoughts were. The next book. This one I really enjoyed. This is Diary of a Void by Emi Yagi. This was translated by David Boyd and Lucy North. This is a Japanese novel. It is really, I really enjoyed this. It's funny, it's distressing, a little surreal, and it's about this woman who is working in this office, and she is stuck with all of the grunt work, all of the office drudgery work, like making coffee for everyone. It's just instant coffee. It's no big deal, but none of the men will touch this work. So she's having to do her job and then having to do all this extra stuff. And one day she just kind of snaps, and she says that she can't do it because she's pregnant and the smell is turning her off. And all of a sudden, the mood and how people interact with her completely changes. And in that change, she's like, oh, wait a minute, there's something here. So she doesn't know why she said it, but then all of a sudden she has to then follow this through. So as she kind of has dumped herself into this lie, she's going to have to maintain it. And in order to maintain it, she needs to learn a little bit about pregnancy, because she's a single woman. She's not married. She doesn't know anything about this. So she goes to an app and she starts to track what would happen if she were pregnant. And so it becomes the diary of the void, the diary as she enters things into this app of what she should expect. And so she starts living as if she is pregnant. So it becomes this really interesting exploration on the ways people interact with her as a perceived pregnant woman. And this is in her personal life. This is in her work setting. She even joins a prenatal aerobics class and does all of these things and starts to, though, lose the thread between what is real and what isn't. And so we start to move into more of a surreal type of exploration of this as the book goes on. I like the character of Miss Shibata. I really liked the exploration of one of her male characters and their relationship, because it changes and it deviates in an interesting way that I didn't see coming, but I really appreciated the sensitivity with which that character was rendered. I'm not so much somebody who enjoys when a story goes into the surreal. That usually kind of pulls me out, but this kept me going. And there were parts that just had me laughing out loud. I really enjoyed this book. Then I kept seeing this book all over Instagram, and everyone kept saying it was so good, it was so good, it was so good. I usually have not necessarily the best luck with literary criticism or pop culture criticism, so I wasn't sure if this was going to work for me, but my God, did it. So I listened to it on audio. I loved it so much, I went out looking for it, and I found a used copy at one of my local bookstores. This is Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Dederer. That's the cover. Picasso in his papier-mâché bull mask. Oh, this book was so good. I found this book to be incredibly approachable, incredibly human, not overly done with, criticism from on high. Just a person who cares very deeply about art, about being a moral person in the world, and struggling with what feels like a moral conundrum. What happens when you love the output, the artistic output of someone who's a monster? And when she says monster, she's including people like Ernest Hemingway, Pablo Picasso, Roman Polanski, Woody Allen, Sylvia Plath, Doris Lessing. And she starts this off by talking about Roman Polanski. And so she was trying to write an article about his work and about how, the moral dilemma of really loving his output and trying to wrestle with him as a figure, and just getting kind of twisted all around, because he's a complicated character. He's someone who survived the Holocaust, and his wife was murdered by the Manson family. Two of she calls it like some of the most horrific incidents that happened in recent years, in the past century, happened directly to him. And yet he raped a teenager, a young teenager. Admittedly, did it. It's been done. And was kind of blasé about it. And so the trying to orient that in her mind was making her a little crazy. And she realized that she was trying to approach the problem from an intellectual lens, And instead it was an emotional one. And so she decided to kind of take a different approach and not focus on the monsters, but flip the lens and look at the fans and look at the audience. And what is it about us? What are our expectations? How do we want to think about this? And in doing so, she has come up with a beautiful, wonderful, very, very thoughtful exploration of that exact conundrum. I think many of you know I don't give 5 stars very often. For me, a 5-star book is something that is so exquisite, so unique, so exceptional that I want to come back to it. That I know I didn't mine all the depths. There's more here. This here is a 5-star book for me. I can't speak more highly of how brilliant it was and how much I felt connected to the journey she took us on as we went through kind of investigating and analyzing this problem. Her writing is crisp, it's thoughtful, it's human. I cannot tell you how much I loved this book. There are no words. I'm going to be coming back to this over and over again. So the next book I want to talk about was a little bit of a letdown, I have to be honest. I just finished it, so this is reactions coming in hot. The book was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I just read her book, Babel, and absolutely loved it. Thought it was so good, so fun, so smart, and erudite, and wisely crafted, and just really in love with the intricacy. And that kind of led me to expect something similar here. And it just is not the same book. And that's completely fine. It's completely fine, but it's not the same. And it's a simpler book. This is more like your summer beach read that has like winks and nods and a takedown of the publishing world and, little salacious, a little schadenfreude kind of thrown in the mix there, which is nothing wrong with that. I just had expected a little bit more craft, a little bit more complexity. I saw everything as before it happened, and so it made it a little bit of a bummer that I kind of figured it all out so early in the plot. The plot, though, is we've got this woman, Juniper. She goes by the name Junie. She's a white woman, and she is friends with Athena. Athena is an Asian woman, and they both went to Yale, I think, and got their degree in creative writing. Athena has gone on to be wildly successful, and Juniper has released a book, but it didn't really go anywhere, and she harbors a little bit of resentment to Athena. She's drawn to her because of her beauty, her poise, her intelligence, her success, but she's always a little resentful of all of that too. This is not a spoiler because it happens so early in the plot and it's kind of crucial to everything holding together. But they go out for a night on the town. And after eating, they go back to Athena's apartment. And while they're there, something happens to Athena and she chokes and dies right in front of Junie. Junie had been in her kind of office space and had seen her latest manuscript and had kind of been poking and kind of taking a little look. She ends up taking the manuscript and unable to revive, or did she really try to really help Athena? Athena dies. She then takes the manuscript and rewrites it and turns it in as hers. And it becomes a wild success. And then it's a case of kind of watching the publicity machine kind of take over And then it just kind of goes on from there as we see her as a character able to justify absolutely anything that she wants, and kind of doubling down on claiming that this is her work entirely. So it's, obviously a comedy and a send-up, a satire of the publishing industry and that they wouldn't even look, they wouldn't even question, or if they did, it was so light it didn't even bear mention. The people who do call her out are then turned on, even though they were right. And it kind of, her life kind of spirals out from there. So, it was a fine book. It was a fun, light romp, satire, all of that. I think I expected a little bit more, and so therefore I was disappointed. I think similarly to what happened with Cursed Bread, just because I was expecting something different doesn't necessarily mean that that book is not going to be a good book for you if it sounds like something that you would like. It was just that I came into the book with some preconceived notions that, once you have those, it's very hard for you to change your expectations on. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what other people think of this book, especially people who've read her previous works, because this is, like I said, it is so different. But let me talk about what I'm currently reading. And I have 2 books that I did finish today, but I'm still processing. So you can expect to see me talking about them next week. The first one is Isa's Ballad by Magda Szabo. Oh, this one was translated by George Sirtes. Magda Szabo is phenomenal. I'm reading this with Natalie of A Curious Reader. So, like I said, stay tuned next week and I'll talk about this one. Then this is something that Leo of Leo's Little Book Life and I read together. This is Sybille Bedford's A Favorite of the Gods. Oh, that cover is marvelous, isn't it? So I will also be reviewing this next week. I'm also started on with the Shirley Hazzard group that many of us have been reading together Shirley Hazzard's fictional work. This is a biography that just came out, and since we finished all of the fiction, which included the short stories, I offered to extend for anybody who wanted to continue on and read this together. This is Shirley Hazzard, A Writing Life by Brigita Olubas. And so far, we've checked in once, so we'll take about 5 weeks to read this. I'm really liking the writing of this. I find that she's adding enough information about Shirley and a lot of really rich source material, but she's also contextualizing it in a really great way and pulling in key aspects of her books and short stories that just, having just read all of it together, I just feel like I'm gleaning new insights about that. So I'm having a blast reading this with everyone. Then Leo and I, since we finished the other Sybille Bedford, we're going to roll straight into this one. This is A Compass Error. Look at that gorgeous cover. And my understanding is this takes one of the characters and continues the story. So looking forward to finding out what happens to Flavia in this one. I made mention that I'm going to be doing a class about the life and times of William Shakespeare and his influence. So I'm continuing on The Soul of the Age, Life, Mind, and World of William Shakespeare by Jonathan Bate. Also very readable, so I'm enjoying this. I haven't gotten that much further, so I really need to be more focused there. Then I went out shopping. I mentioned that I wanted to look for monsters at the used bookstore. I found something that's not even out yet in the United States. This is a Waterstone copy of an author that I'm hit or miss with. The first one she did, I adored. Second one, didn't really love that much. But so this one is gonna set the tone. This is Janice Hallett's The Mysterious Case of the Alberton Angels. And this was actually a signed copy from Waterstone. So I'm I'm sure a lot of people had no idea what they were looking at as they were going through the shelves, but I saw it. I was like, oh, I know what that is. So excited. I might actually dip into this evening. I haven't read a mystery in a bit, and that's usually a good palate cleanser for me. So that's it for me. I would love to know, have you read any of these books? What were your thoughts? And I will look forward to talking to you next week again, and I hope you have a great week of reading. Thank you so much. Bye.